Welcome. Video number 2 for Pasantías Preprofesionales y Vinculación con la Comunidad 2. This is the lesson plan number 2 in the journal and in the lesson plans. The topic for this class is past progressive tense and simple past tense contrast. This is why we started reviewing the simple past tense in the former lesson plan. Well, let's start. For the anticipatory set, the teacher tells students a short story about the activities she carried out the past weekend. So, this is for every teacher. I just invented a short story about the last weekend I was at my mother's house and I was there for lunch and my mother cooked something while I was doing another things. This is to starting in the introduction of the topic, that is a contrast between the past progressive and the simple past. This is why I use some sentences as I was making a cake when I heard the phone ringing, for example. Then this is a contrast, and the students will hear the whole story maybe once or twice because they need to understand or maybe catch the idea of what the teacher is saying. This is in the anticipatory set. If the teacher can, she could carry some pictures of the things she's going to tell. As I was talking about lunch in my mom's house, I could carry some pictures of lunch or families or things like that. Then we have the main teaching input part. In this part, we start with a warm-up activity. The warm-up activity, in this case, is when teacher asks questions to students about the activities they carried out last weekend. So, in this part, we are not using all the contrast, but this is to start taking students into the topic. The teacher can ask one by one or choose just a few students, or maybe ask for if someone wants freely answer the questions. And this takes a few minutes, and after that the teacher introduces the topic, the structure of the topic, and tells students that this class is about a contrast in between the past progressive and the simple past, and then show to students the structure. The structure, this time I prepared some sticky notes to stick on the board. This sticky notes has a sentence and also the structure is saying a subject, verb to be in past, verb in ing, and the complement. And this is a stick on the board in order to students to read the structure of this grammar part. After that, we can form the questions. The questions could be formed with the same sticky notes because for making questions from this past progressive, we have just to change order, and this is why I chose sticky notes this time, in order just to move around and show students how easy it is to transform a sentence into a question. Well, after this part, there is a listening activity. The teacher can record herself and after that reproduce the tape, or maybe she can just read aloud with a perfect pronunciation and speak very loud and paused. This is important for students to understand the topic, and as in every listening part, the listening could be read or reproduced once or twice in order to students to understand. The activity of the listening is about a couple that is walking around the city and suddenly it starts to rain. In this part there is many sentences that contrast the two tenses. For example, Paula and Andres were walking on the street and they stopped to see a beautiful dog. This is one of the sentences in the listening activity. Here we can evidence the contrast between the past progressive and the simple past. All the activity has the same kind of sentences. After reading or listening this part, as I said before, once or twice, teacher asks questions to students to check comprehension of the reading. These questions are: what were Paula and Andres doing? What happened then? After the answer of any students, they could raise hands. We ask them, what happened then? This is for they understand that while they were doing something, another thing interrupts this action. After this part, teacher asks the same question to different students and asks for an explanation. Maybe if they answer different, because sometimes students think that the second action is not the interruptions, is the interrupted, and we have to state clearly this part. Well, this part of the class concludes by reviewing the grammar chart again in the part of the structure with sticky notes, and then when we change the form of the structure to make it into questions. Well, in the modeling part, the teacher reads again to students a short story about her weekend. We take again the part of the warm-up activity, and we read again this short paragraph and emphasize on the part of the progressive sentences with the voice. So students are asked after that to write all the sentences they hear using the past progressive tense. For example, if in the short paragraph we say I was making a cake, this is one of the sentences they should write down on their topic books, and this is for the modeling part. In the guided practice, students work in pairs to develop an activity which is about editing a worksheet. Then I prepared a worksheet that is with many mistakes between the past progressive and the simple past, and students have to edit this part. They work in pairs, and students, if they need, they can ask to the teacher, because this is the guided practice. In the independent practice, students will write on their copybooks about the activities they did last weekend. In order to not take too much time, the students can write just about 3 or 4 sentences, no more. In the assessment part, students will edit a text with sentences in simple past and past progressive, and they will edit these mistakes that are in the text on purpose. This is again, the teacher will write about 3 or 4 sentences on the board, and students have to raise hands and tell where it is wrong. In the closing review and follow-up, the class will be concluded by reviewing the grammar structures. Again, we have to use the sticky notes maybe, and with different sentences, using maybe the sentences that the student just corrected a few minutes ago. And then for homework, students will ask a relative about their childhood, and maybe write a whole paragraph or 3 or 4 sentences that involve the two structures, the contrast of the structures studied in the lesson this class. This is the class number 2, and this is the video number 2.